For better or worse, every single week, She-Hulk keeps on surprising me. Every time I think I'm out, it pulls me back in. Welcome back, MCU fans. Thank you for clicking on my spoiler review for She-Hulk Episode 4. Every single week, we are discussing all the spoilers for every episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law as they drop on Disney+. So make sure you watch the episode before this video, but once you do, I need you to start a conversation about it in the comments below with your thoughts, because that's the most important part. And whereas 2 weeks ago, I was rather impressed with how well this second episode established stakes and conflicts, characters, and the world, but last week, I had a ton of issues with the episode. This week, it feels like we're much more focused. Even in a lot of ways, a ton of the issues I usually have with this show, with its episodic structure, more loose narrative, and lighter tone, this episode makes it work. It's still not the best episode. I still think it conflicts a lot with itself in terms of an identity crisis, but we'll get to issues in a bit. When it comes to the focus of this episode, where She-Hulk has to represent Wong in court as he wants to sue a former apprentice of Kamartaj named Donny Blaze, which I'm sure is an Easter egg that will get a ton of MCU fans talking. It connects all the story threads in this episode really well. The humor is absolutely wonderful. More of Wong is never a bad idea. But before we continue chatting about the Wong and She-Hulk team-up show, I need your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this review, if you're enjoying the weekly She-Hulk coverage, and if you love movies and TV, this is the place to be. So consider clicking that subscribe button down there, and you won't miss any future conversations in your favorite movies and TV. Tatiana Maslany and Benedict Wong are just absolutely delightful together. They have incredible chemistry, their banter is absolutely sharp and fast and witty, and it feels so natural between the two of them. Whether it's on the courtroom, whether they're discussing what's the next step throughout this case, or in the battlefield fighting those demons later in the episode to just expel them back into their realm. It's just a wonderful relationship, and it feels like the trailers have shown us all the clips of Wong and She-Hulk, so I certainly hope we're wrong. I certainly hope they haven't shown us anything and Wong continues to be in this show, because this is one of my favorite relationships. It seems that Wong has just out of this world chemistry with anyone, but apart from Doctor Strange, perhaps one of my favorite pairings in the MCU is Wong and She-Hulk, just because of how different their realities are. So when they clash, it leads to incredibly wonderful results. And I love the self-awareness of this show. It immediately starts off with Jen in her car talking to the camera, saying how this is not the cameo show, and then the show makes a fool out of itself. The show, in its episodic nature, makes a fool of its lead character, thinking this is all about her. And it's not. It's about her being a major presence in the MCU, continuing that fantastic world building, which is the best aspect of this series. And one of my favorite aspects of this episode is how it's fleshing out this show's connection to the wider MCU, and it's connecting other characters from the magic side of the MCU, from the mystic side of the MCU in Wong, into the real world, and they bring in Madison. Now, this is an archetype that I usually hate. When it comes to those Jersey Shore reality shows, and really all kinds of reality shows, the Love Islands and all that bullshit, I hate it. I cannot stand it. This show knows exactly how grating these people usually are, and it uses that to great comedic effect. How useless Madison is in the court of law when she's trying to be a help for Wong, or at least when She-Hulk thought she could be a help for Wong when she's defending him in court. With her being in the audience as Donny Blaze is having his magic show and he throws her into another realm, she crashes into Wong and spoils The Sopranos for him. It's all really funny stuff. And then even in the post-credit scene when they're now chubby and all friends with one another, sharing popcorn and watching shows that she continues to spoil. I love this show's self-awareness when it is actually being self-aware. Not just in terms of what's happening in this isolated episode, but just in its connection to the MCU. The way this show is connecting itself to the larger universe at hand is working really well. The B storyline in this, I think it's also wonderfully done. It's very similar in tone to the other storylines, so they blend in very nicely. They naturally create conflict with one another when Jan is trying to activate, let's say, her love life, but she's not having luck. I think a lot of people can connect with that. I think it's a very relatable issue. I'm not in my 30s, but I can guess how in your 30s it's rather awkward and strange and really not that exciting to go into online dating and no one's really interested in her. Let me say this, I would be very interested. I would swipe right very fast on Tatiana Maslany, but she uses her She-Hulk persona to get ahead in the game. She starts getting a ton of likes, even though she says she's not proud of it. A ton of this stuff when it comes to online dating is so awkward and so grimy, and it takes all the humanity away from dating and meeting other people. I think it's wonderful how this show handles this storyline. We see She-Hulk going on a ton of dates, including a guy that I don't know why or how she would swipe right on him, but it's this guy who is a complete Tony Stark wannabe, and there's no way in hell She-Hulk would swipe right on him at all. And what works really well for this episode is how it drastically improves on the biggest mistake from last week's, and that is the conflict naturally bringing the two storylines together. Donny Blaze's show gets out of control, bringing in all these demons from another dimension. Wong has to stop it, and naturally that requires some help from She-Hulk, who is on this date with this genuinely handsome guy who is super nice, genuinely wants to talk about her and getting to know her, and eventually it takes our hero down a peg as her super heroics as a lawyer life is starting to go on the up and up, is starting to improve. Her dating life on the morning after, as soon as she is not She-Hulk anymore, where the guy just leaves in the next morning, doesn't want breakfast, doesn't want to talk with her about anything, just immediately out of there. It uses our hero's cheat, it uses her compromise with her own morality to take her down a notch. It's using these character flaws to progress this character. This is what is working for Jen. When her flaws are put on the forefront, when she tries to get around something, and when she compromises who she is, what she believes in, the show uses that and conveys that as a major flaw that she has to overcome. And then we have my big issue with the show, where we're 4 episodes into this 9-episode series, and the show still feels like it wants to be a continuous storyline, while at the same time being an episodic, comedic legal procedure. I think both can work. This episode illustrates that impeccably, but it cannot be both at the same time. These two ways of telling the story, whether you're a continuous narrative or you're a more loose, episodic, lawyer case one week, another case the other week, they just are not blending in together for me well at this point. Because after her date leaves and Jen is feeling really down, this guy comes in to serve her a lawsuit where Titania has trademarked the term She-Hulk, once more making Jen feel powerless in this moment where being herself is not working for her job, is not working for her dating life. She feels completely out of her depth, where she can only be She-Hulk, and now even She-Hulk is being taken away from her. If that is going to be the show's main conflict with our lead antagonist, Titania, who I'm assuming is the lead antagonist, it's not that interesting. I think it can lead to a lot of amusing moments in the courtroom. I think it can be a legal procedure that is funny, but it's not that compelling to just get the She-Hulk name back, because at this point I really don't doubt that Jen is going to do it. And this is all assuming this is going to be our main conflict. If it is, I'm just not that interested in supposedly the main plot line of the show, and I'm going to be much more interested in the cameos. A lot of things are happening to She-Hulk in the show, but it's all things happening around her. It's not her guiding the story forward. So despite her possibly guiding the story forward in this legal argument with Titania, it's just not that compelling. It's just not that fascinating of a story to follow. So this is an episode that I thoroughly enjoyed. I had a really good time in this episode seeing Jen and Wong work together in the courtroom as superheroes. Jen is starting to step more and more into that world, and as we see in this episode, actually having fun at it, actually being good at it. She's starting to become proud of being She-Hulk when it comes to being a lawyer and when it comes to being a superhero. The teases that we're getting right now for the future is what takes my excitement a little bit away. It numbs it a slight bit. I'm still going to watch the show. I still care about this character, and I want to see her be happy in her personal life and be a successful lawyer, but I'm not that emotionally invested in the story that they're apparently teasing. We got a completely different tease last week with the Wrecking Crew, and I just don't think Titania is their boss, particularly now that we have this whole storyline. So I really don't know where this show is going, and where that could be interesting in other shows, in other narratives, depending on the execution. Here, it just feels like it's teasing a ton of different directions that do not converge, sadly. Episode 4 is a nice addition to the series. Looking at it as one of those looser episodic stories that maybe don't have a bigger impact on the wider scope of the show, but once you start to connect to the wider scope with all the teases that we have to a continuous narrative, to the rest of what Jan's character is going through, it starts to create a jarring disproportion in focus on this show in general. I'm starting to get worried for the rest of this show. It's a show with great parts, interesting characters, amusing ideas, a riveting style, and sharp humor with a ton of wit, but all these parts aren't necessarily creating for the most interesting or compelling or emotionally investing whole. But those are only my thoughts on She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 4. I need you to start a conversation about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me every single week with all these reviews. And next week, I'm going in blind. This is the last episode I saw early, so we're going to be on the same footing for this next week and moving on in the show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members for always supporting this channel. And until the next one, love each other and love the movies.